Today I want to talk about volunteering, which I'm a little bit nervous about doing because I'm afraid it's going to sound like propaganda. But I personally think that volunteering is a great thing for avoidant people to do, and not entirely altruistically, but because it's so helpful to them. It actually used to be a part of the diagnostic criteria to be avoidant that you had to be quote-unquote underemployed. Now, of course, they dropped that because what does that mean? But it is really common for avoidant people to not have traditional jobs and to not take jobs that are at the level where they are actually qualified and capable of doing because they have too much interaction with other people. So that leads to the first question. If you can't work and get paid for it, why on earth would you volunteer and not get paid for it but do work? There's quite a few reasons that it's really great. First of all, because they do have different standards for a volunteer position than a paid position. Generally, they're more grateful, and that alone. And you get a job where you've got somebody that thinks that you owe them because you're being paid. I mean, it just takes one to sort of sour the entire experience. And a lot of bosses feel that way. They feel like, okay, I'm paying you, therefore you are basically my slave to do whatever I tell you to do. And you're constantly being asked to do things that are not part of your job description, but you're not asked. You're told and demanded, and people are disgusted with you if you balk at all because suddenly you've got extra work to do on top of your regular job. That does not happen in volunteer situations. Now, you might want to help, but they appreciate all the help that you do, and they don't sort of slam you if you don't. They just appreciate you even more if you do a little extra, if you can stay extra. So there's number one, is the environment is just completely different. Number two, you have a lot more control if you're a volunteer than if you're an employee. It gives you fantastic practice for being a regular employee. Like, you'll have, certain times usually that you're supposed to work, or at least you'll have deadlines. But there are volunteer positions which are totally, behind the scenes, where you don't actually interact with people. And those have deadlines, and it's just like, okay, well, we'd really like this to be done by this time. And if you don't get it done, of course you really want to get it done because, but it's, you're not getting a threat of having your pay docked and your insurance taken away and losing your house and everything else if it's a volunteer position where you don't perform exactly how they expect you to. The other thing is you're really much more likely to find and do something that fits you when it's a volunteer position rather than when it's an employment situation. You sort of have to do whatever's available. So you can find volunteer positions that have a little bit of people contact or no people contact at all. So you can use it to push your boundaries in a really great way that maybe you'll learn to be able to handle this type of interaction. You'll be able to see what the limitations are. You maybe not think so absolutely black and white, like I absolutely cannot interact with people, or maybe you're something a little bit closer to what I've got, which is I can interact with somebody as long as it's not an ongoing type of relationship. I can even interact with somebody on a very casual, ongoing type situation. As long as it's not personal at all, works for me. As long as I'm not the focus, I can continue to interact with people. And for some reason that insane I'm going to be judged thing is not being triggered when I'm volunteering. I don't know. So again, you've got more control. You can pick the type of business that you want to volunteer for, or charity, or whatever it is. You know, you can volunteer at a school and work only with children. You can volunteer with animals. You can volunteer, you know, wherever it is. You can volunteer and only do art. You can volunteer and only, you know, do math type stuff. That really made it sound great, but I mean, seriously, you can do whatever you're best at, as opposed to getting stuck with whatever's available. And again, that's great for avoidant people, because it is sort of an ego boost. If you work with what you know and what you're capable of and you're really good at and you can do, as opposed to maybe you're doing a job where only 40% of it you're really good at and the rest of it you feel constantly like somebody's going to find out you're a fraud or whatever, etc. So that's another really good thing about it, is that it'll push your boundaries. It'll also sort of shore you up, and it'll do it in a way that's not confrontational, that you're not you know, getting awards for usually. You know, you're not having somebody that's feeling like, you know, and the most you usually get when you're volunteering, you'll get somebody saying thank you, but you won't get somebody saying, gosh, you did a really great job, you did better than Joe over there. They're not going to do that. There's not a hierarchy type situation in a volunteer. There shouldn't be. If there is, then find some other place to volunteer. There's tons of places to volunteer. So it pulls you out of that sort of competition thing that that sort of fuels the poor self-esteem for a lot of people, and that judgment thing. It gets rid of it for you, so it's great on that level, and you feel good about yourself because you're helping somebody that you really feel like deserves it. You know, you're not just doing the same thing in and out, day in, day out, over and over and over again, you know, for somebody else to make money off of, and for you to get a little bit of a payment that probably isn't enough if you're avoidant. So, and then there's different kinds of volunteers, and like I said, first of all, there's behind the scenes, and then there's very much hands-on, like, you know, you can have something where you're helping plants at a place or something like that. That's very outside and still individual, but it's concrete. You're getting something done. Same with, I mean, I don't know, like stuffing envelopes for somebody, or even helping to set up like their computer mailing list or something like that. Typing, anything like that. You know, same thing. So there's some very hands-on, off, you know, away from people type jobs, and then there are more jobs where you can interact on a small level or a larger level with people. So there's that. There's also different sort of types of volunteerism where you could have one-off little situations. I've done that. Usually something. Usually, actually, it's for my. It was for my son. That there's something coming around that he was really interested in, and so I looked into it, and it would be seriously like a one-time deal, that they needed people to help do something, you know, direct cars out front or something like that. There can also be sort of like an annual volunteer thing, which again, I mean, the good thing about that is you can get really sort of used to the ropes, but then there's no expectation that you're going to come back and repeat. These would be like, I don't know, baking cookies for the school, or if they have fairs or something like that, where, you know, they need somebody to man a booth or something like that, or pick up recycling bags and bring them to a central location or something like that. And again, and usually if it's a big thing like that where you've got a fair, there's lots and lots of different things that you could do to help. So you could do a different job every year. And then, of course, there are ongoing volunteer jobs where you would have like an hour a week that you would do every week, or 2 hours a month, every third Saturday or something like that. And you would go to the same location, and that would help the avoidance, because it would help you sort of build up the idea of being around certain people, and just being with them, getting to know them a little bit on a it's awful to say a superficial basis, but really a superficial basis. And that's a really hard thing for avoidant people to learn and for introverted people to learn. Small talk drives people crazy. Getting to know little acquaintance type relationships, they just sort of don't exist for avoidant people. They're really, really hard for them to get. It's very black and white. It's either, somebody that's almost a soulmate because there's only one of them that actually knows anything about you, and then there are people that you don't interact with at all. And acquaintance type relationships, they're not easy, and they're hard to come by. But if you are volunteering at some same location where the focus is getting your job done, not being social, but you sort of get used to people, and you'll be able to learn to tolerate, because they might be interested, but they know so little that they're not really going to care about your answer. They might ask you, okay, what did you do over this long weekend or something? And that causes panic for somebody. If you think, oh my gosh, they're going to remember this, they're going to remember that the last 3 long weekends I did nothing, but if it's an acquaintance type situation who's used to everybody else's details and sort of puts priority on them, you saying, hey, I sort of hung out at the house, they're going to think that's great and refreshing. They're not going to remember you always hang out at the house, because they're not around you enough to remember that. So there's that type of situation. There's also on-call volunteering, which is sort of completely different. Again, you have more control, way more control if you do that. You sort of get all the benefits of it all together, because you'll sort of have that acquaintance building relationship with people, but you don't have the pressure of having an absolute schedule where you must be there and you feel like they're dependent on you. When you do accept a call that, we're really, had everybody call in and we really need some volunteers for this day, and you do it, they're extremely grateful to you. So in a way, that's the best of everything. If you could be sort of a fill-in volunteer every once in a while, and then if you're up for it, you can go do it, and if you're not, then you can skip it. So those are some of the really great benefits of being a volunteer. If you're going to do it, I wouldn't have it sort of the primary thought in your head that this is a stepping stone to a position, a job. That's a possibility, but if that's what you're focused on, then you're going to lose out on all the other benefits that you maybe would be able to get to if you're volunteering. And that's a possibility. And a lot of people couch it like that. They'll say, yes, you should volunteer in order to get another job. I don't think so. And the other thing that really isn't ever stated enough, but in a lot of cases, if you're volunteering, that might make the other job that you have that you're doing to pay the bills, that might make that tolerable. Whereas, because you're still leaving the house and you're doing something, but if you go and you do a job that you basically can't stand, with people that you don't know and you can't stand and you hate every second of it and it's killing you, and that's all you do, it will kill you. But if you have a volunteer position that you really sort of feel so much better about, it might be that little bit of extra boost that lets you do the other jobs that you need to do, and lets you go to do the therapies that you need to do and stuff like that. So again, I really do recommend that as sort of a coping technique, and as a life skill, to try to find something that you are really interested in, and volunteer and see if that can improve your life.